Daniel Hartman had always believed that stability felt like silence. Not the awkward kind, not the heavy pauses in broken conversations, but a calm, predictable quiet. The kind that settles into a life when nothing urgent is demanding attention. At 34, Daniel thought he had finally earned that silence. From the large windows of his Brooklyn apartment, Manhattan looked distant and orderly, its skyline softened by a thin winter haze. The city no longer overwhelmed him. It simply existed like his work, his routines, his future. Every morning he reviewed blueprints at a respected architecture firm near Dumbo. Every evening he came home to Olivia. Olivia Monroe was the kind of woman people noticed without meaning to. Not loudly beautiful, but precisely so sharp cheekbones, controlled smiles, a confidence that felt curated. Online, she was magnetic. Her social media accounts documented a life of balance, career milestones, elegant dinners, quiet mornings with coffee and sunlight. To the world, she and Daniel were proof that things still worked out for reasonable people. Their wedding was 6 weeks away. The invitations had already been sent thick, textured paper with minimalist typography. Daniel's parents called every Sunday, eager, proud. Olivia's mother had opinions about everything from flowers to seating arrangements. Friends joked that Daniel had won the lottery. He smiled when they said that. That Friday evening, Olivia sat across from him at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone while pretending to listen. She was leaving early the next morning for her bachelorette weekend in Manhattan, a luxury hotel, close friends, carefully planned indulgence. "You'll survive without me for 2 nights," she said lightly, not looking up. Daniel nodded. "Try not to bankrupt us." She laughed a quick, polished sound and leaned over to kiss his cheek. Her perfume lingered after she stood, familiar and comforting. He didn't notice then how brief the kiss was, or how quickly she pulled away. Later that night, Daniel lay awake beside her, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing. His mind drifted not to jealousy or fear, but to logistics, work deadlines, honeymoon flights, the shape of the life they were about to lock in. What Daniel didn't know, what no one told him, was that certainty is often the last illusion before collapse. And somewhere in Manhattan, plans were already unfolding that would turn his silence into something else entirely. The hotel suite overlooked Midtown like a private observation deck, glass walls, muted gold lighting, a curated luxury that suggested nothing real could go wrong inside it. Olivia stood near the window with a champagne flute in her hand, watching the city flicker below as if it were a carefully edited video. Her friends had arrived in waves. Laughter filled the room, sharp and unrestrained, the kind reserved for nights that were supposed to exist outside consequence. There were 5 of them, women Olivia had collected across different phases of her life: college, her first job, her current career. None of them knew her completely, and that, in a strange way, was why she had invited them. "You're really doing it," Claire said, adjusting the white sash draped across Olivia's shoulder. "Bride-to-be. 6 weeks and you're officially off the market." "Off the market!" The phrase landed heavier than Olivia expected. She smiled anyway. "It's not a prison sentence." They laughed. Someone turned the music up. Someone else poured another round. On social media, the night would look effortless: boomerangs of raised glasses, a group photo framed by city lights, captions about forever. What wouldn't appear were the pauses between smiles, the moments when Olivia's gaze drifted toward nothing, the subtle tension she carried like a second skin. The first hours passed cleanly. Dinner downstairs, compliments from strangers, a shared bathroom mirror where they reapplied lipstick and reaffirmed each other's beauty. Olivia played her role well. She always had. By 10, the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't announced. It never is. One drink turned into several. Boundaries softened. The night grew louder. Less curated, more honest in its recklessness. Claire suggested going out. Someone else suggested staying in. A third friend, Rebecca, newly divorced and sharp-tongued, smiled in a way that made Olivia uneasy. "Relax," Rebecca said, already scrolling through her phone. "It's your last night of freedom." Olivia didn't correct her. The man arrived shortly after 11. He was introduced casually, as if his presence required no explanation. An acquaintance of someone's coworker, or a friend of a friend who knew how to make things happen. Tall, confident, expensive in a way that wasn't subtle. He didn't flirt immediately. He didn't need to. Olivia noticed him noticing her. At first, she told herself it was harmless. Attention had always been part of her world. She worked in media. Visibility was currency. She smiled back without intention, without commitment. But intention is often something we assign after the fact. They talked. Nothing intimate. Work. The city. How loud Manhattan felt compared to Brooklyn. He listened in a way that felt deliberate, like he was storing information rather than reacting to it. "You seem calm for someone about to get married," he said. Olivia lifted her glass. "Should I be panicking?" "Most people do," he replied. "Even the happy ones." She didn't ask how he knew. She didn't ask why the comment unsettled her. At some point, her phone buzzed in her purse. Daniel's name lit up the screen, briefly illuminating the dark leather. She didn't answer. She didn't decline the call either. The phone kept vibrating until it stopped. No one noticed. Or if they did, they didn't comment. Later, the music got louder, the lights dimmer. The suite felt smaller, warmer, charged. Olivia laughed more than she meant to. She let herself lean closer than necessary when the man spoke. She told herself it was the alcohol, or the pressure, or the narrative of the night itself. This is what you're supposed to do before everything changes. When he touched her arm, it didn't feel like a violation. It felt like permission. The moment it crossed from flirtation into something else wasn't marked by a kiss or a confession. It was quieter. A look held too long. A shared silence that suggested understanding. When her friends disappeared into the bedroom, into the bathroom, into their own distractions, Olivia stayed where she was. She could have left. She could have picked up her phone. She could have remembered Daniel lying awake beside her, his mind full of plans, his trust unguarded. Instead, she followed him onto the balcony. The city air was cold, sharp, sobering in a way that should have stopped her. He stood close enough that she could feel his heat through her dress. "This doesn't have to mean anything," he said, not as reassurance, but as an invitation. Olivia didn't answer. She didn't need to. The choice had already been made, not in that instant, but long before. In every moment she had avoided discomfort. In every time she had chosen appearance over honesty. What happened next would later be described as a mistake, a lapse, a night out of character. But standing there with the city watching and no one stopping her, Olivia felt something else entirely. She felt seen. By the time she returned to the suite, her reflection in the mirror looked the same. Hair intact, makeup flawless, no visible evidence of what she had done or what it had cost. Her phone buzzed again, a message this time. "Miss you already," Daniel had written. She stared at the screen longer than necessary before slipping the phone face down onto the counter. The rest of the night blurred itself into fragments laughter that felt too loud, promises she didn't intend to keep, a sense of time slipping away from her control. When dawn finally pressed against the windows, Olivia felt hollow rather than tired. She packed quietly while her friends slept. In the elevator, alone, she caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. For the first time that night, she didn't recognize herself. What Olivia didn't know, what she couldn't yet see, was that the damage wasn't contained in that hotel suite. It had already begun to travel outward, invisible but unstoppable. By morning, the truth would start looking for a way out. The apartment felt wrong the moment Daniel woke up. It wasn't silent. Traffic still murmured from the street below. The refrigerator hummed softly, but something essential was missing, like a note dropped from a familiar chord. Olivia's side of the bed was cold, perfectly made, too perfectly. She had always left small traces behind, a twisted sheet, a discarded hair tie, the faint indentation of sleep. This morning there was nothing. Daniel checked the time. 7:12 a.m. She should have been back by now. He lay still for a few seconds longer, staring at the ceiling, trying to reason away the unease forming in his chest. Late checkout, brunch with friends, a dying phone battery. There were harmless explanations for absence. There always were until there weren't. When Olivia finally came in just before 8, Daniel heard the door open quietly, deliberately. Keys placed on the counter without sound. shoes removed with care. She moved like someone entering a stranger's home. "Hey," she said from the hallway. Her voice was normal. That, more than anything else, unsettled him. "Morning," Daniel replied, watching her step into the kitchen. She looked exactly as she always did, hair pulled back, makeup minimal, posture controlled. But something in her eyes skidded away from his gaze, as if contact were optional now. "How was it?" he asked. "Fun," Olivia said too quickly. She reached for the coffee maker, her back to him. Loud. "I'm exhausted." Daniel nodded. He waited for more. A detail. A story. Something human. Nothing came. She busied herself with small tasks, filling the silence with movement rather than words. When she finally turned to face him, she smiled, but it was a smile that arrived late, like an afterthought. "You didn't text much," he said carefully. Olivia shrugged. Reception was terrible. It was a small lie. In another life, he might have let it pass. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the space between them suddenly enormous. Daniel watched her hands as she scrolled through her phone, thumb moving faster than usual. She didn't show him anything. She didn't offer to. Her phone buzzed. She froze. It was brief, barely a second, but Daniel saw it. The way her fingers tightened. The way her breath caught before she exhaled. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah," she said, already flipping the phone face down. "Just group chat nonsense." Daniel felt something shift inside him, not a conclusion, not an accusation, but a fracture. Trust didn't shatter all at once. It splintered quietly. Later, while Olivia showered, Daniel cleared the table. As he moved the mugs to the sink, her phone lit up again on the counter. He wasn't trying to look. It simply happened. A notification banner slid across the screen. Last night didn't feel like a goodbye. The name was unfamiliar. Daniel stared at the words until the screen dimmed. He told himself not to pick it up. He told himself this was a misunderstanding waiting to be explained. But doubt had already found its way in, and doubt was patient. When Olivia emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, Daniel was standing by the window. "Did you have fun?" she asked again, softer this time. He turned to face her. Studied her the way he might study a structure he'd trusted for years, only now noticing hairline cracks. "Who's Marcus?" he asked. The towel slipped slightly as Olivia stiffened. "Why?" she said. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He held her gaze, waiting for something real. "Your phone," he said. It lit up. Silence stretched between them, heavy and uncooperative. Olivia swallowed. "He's no one," she said. "Just someone we met." "Met where?" "At the hotel." "And the message?" She hesitated. "Just long enough." "It was nothing," she said. "People say stupid things when they've been drinking." Daniel nodded slowly, as if absorbing a technical explanation. Something inside him receded. They didn't argue. They didn't raise their voices. Instead, the morning dissolved into careful avoidance, two people circling a truth neither wanted to touch. By noon, Olivia left to run errands. Daniel stayed behind, alone with the city and his thoughts. He replayed the night in reverse, her absence, her distance, the message that shouldn't exist. Trust, once instinctive, now required effort, and effort felt like denial. By evening, Daniel understood one thing with unsettling clarity. Whatever had happened, it hadn't ended when Olivia came home. It had only gone quiet. The truth did not arrive all at once. It came in peace, uninvited, uncoordinated like debris, washing ashore after a storm no one had seen coming. Daniel found the first fragment that afternoon while trying to work from home and failing. His laptop sat open on the dining table, architectural plans untouched, the cursor blinking like an accusation. He told himself distraction was temporary, that clarity would return. Instead, his attention kept drifting back to the counter where Olivia had left her iPad. She had always been careless with devices. Trust, she once said, meant not locking everything away. Daniel hadn't touched it until now. The screen woke instantly, no password. He hesitated long enough to recognize that whatever he found would change the shape of things permanently. Then he opened her messages. There was no dramatic confession, no explicit exchange. What unsettled him most was how ordinary it all looked. Short messages, half-finished thoughts, timestamps that stretched deep into the night. Did you get back okay? Yeah. Can't sleep. Neither can I. The conversation didn't read like a drunken mistake scrambling for justification. It read like continuity, like two people who expected to keep talking. Daniel scrolled further. Photos appeared not of bodies, not of acts, but of the city from the balcony. The same skyline Daniel had admired from afar the night before. A shared view, a shared moment. And beneath one image, Olivia's reply, "Last night felt honest in a way I didn't expect." Daniel sat back, the chair legs scraping softly against the floor. Honest. The word echoed louder than any graphic detail could have. When Olivia returned that evening, she sensed the shift immediately. Daniel was too still, too focused. He didn't ask about her errands. He didn't pretend. "Sit down," he said. She did. He placed the iPad between them. "I read this," he said calmly. Olivia's face drained of color, not in panic, but in recognition, as if she'd known this moment was coming and had simply run out of time to avoid it. "It wasn't planned," she began. Daniel held up a hand. "I don't want a defense." She pressed her lips together. Her eyes glistened, but the tears didn't fall. "What I need," he continued, "is to understand whether this was an accident or a choice." The question landed with quiet force. Olivia looked down at her hands. When she spoke, her voice was measured, careful. "I didn't go looking for anything," she said. "But when it happened, I didn't stop it either." Daniel nodded once. "Why?" She inhaled, slow and deliberate. "Because for once," she said, "I wasn't being the person everyone expected me to be." The words hung between them, fragile and dangerous. She told him about the attention, the way it felt to be seen without history, without obligation, how the night had given her permission to step outside the version of herself she'd been maintaining for years. "It wasn't about him," Olivia said. "It was about how I felt." Daniel absorbed that quietly. "So it wasn't just desire," he said. "It was relief." She looked up, startled by the accuracy. "Yes." The admission settled heavily in the room. Daniel realized then that the betrayal wasn't confined to a single night or a single man. It was structural. It had roots. It had intent. "You didn't think about me," he said, not accusing, observing. Olivia's silence answered for her. That night, Daniel slept on the couch. Not out of anger, but because the bedroom no longer felt like shared ground. The ceiling above him looked unfamiliar, as if the apartment itself were rearranging its loyalties. He understood now what had truly happened. It wasn't that Olivia had crossed a line. It was that she had stepped over it willingly and discovered she didn't want to step back. And once intention is revealed, there is no pretending it was just a mistake. They talked for days without ever arriving anywhere. The conversations took place in fragments over half-finished dinners, between meetings late at night when exhaustion softened the edges of things. Olivia spoke carefully now, as if each word had to pass through several filters before it was allowed to exist. Daniel listened. That was his role. "I don't want to lose us," she said one evening, sitting at the edge of the couch where he had been sleeping. Her posture was composed, but her hands betrayed her, fingers folding into each other, then releasing. Daniel didn't respond. "I know I hurt you," Olivia continued, "but people make mistakes. That doesn't mean everything we built is meaningless." Mistake. The word again. Daniel studied her face, the familiarity of it, the years embedded in its expressions. He noticed how she spoke about what they had, never about what she had chosen. "You keep describing the outcome," he said finally, "not the decision." She frowned slightly. "What's the difference?" "The difference," Daniel said, "is accountability." Olivia exhaled, frustration flickering beneath her control. "I've apologized for the damage," he said, "not the intent." That night, she cried, quietly, without hysteria. Tears slipped down her cheeks as if she were rehearsing grief rather than feeling it fully. "I felt trapped," she said. "Everything about our life was decided. The wedding, the house, the future. That night it felt like I could breathe." Daniel nodded slowly. "So you escaped," he said, "and I became collateral." She shook her head quickly. "That's not fair, isn't it?" Her explanations grew more polished as time passed. She spoke of pressure, of expectations placed on women to be perfect partners, perfect wives. She spoke of fear, fear of becoming invisible, fear of regret, fear of never knowing who she was outside of commitment. Daniel didn't dismiss any of it. He understood fear. He understood suffocation. What he couldn't understand was why none of her words included him as a person, only as a structure, a role, a certainty she had leaned against and then stepped away from. One afternoon, she suggested therapy. Together, she said quickly, we owe it to ourselves. Daniel considered it, not because he believed it would fix anything, but because it would have been easier than choosing an ending. But ease no longer appealed to him. At night, lying awake on the couch, he replayed moments from their past small instances he had once ignored. The way Olivia avoided difficult conversations, how she curated her emotions the same way she curated her public image, how silence had always been her preferred tool when honesty felt risky. He realized then that the betrayal hadn't begun at the bachelorette party. It had begun years earlier, in all the truths she had chosen not to speak. On the fourth night, Olivia sat beside him again. I cut contact, she said. Blocked him, deleted everything. Daniel looked at her. That's good, he said. She waited for relief, for reassurance, for gratitude. None came. Does that help? She asked quietly. He thought for a long moment before answering. It helps you feel safer, he said. It doesn't help me feel chosen. The distinction landed hard. Olivia opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, she seemed genuinely lost, not defensive, not strategic. Daniel stood up, feeling an unfamiliar calm settle over him. You're trying to repair the damage, he said gently, but you're still avoiding the truth. And what truth is that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. That when you had the chance to choose me, he said, you didn't want to. Silence followed, thick, irreversible. In that silence, something shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, but permanently. The wedding did not stop moving just because the truth had arrived. Emails continued to land in Daniel's inbox, caterers confirming menus, a florist asking about centerpieces, a venue coordinator requesting final headcounts. The machinery of celebration was efficient, indifferent. Once set in motion, it assumed commitment was permanent. Daniel replied to everything with short, neutral answers. Yes, confirmed, looks good. From the outside, nothing had changed. On social media, Olivia posted a photo of the two of them from months earlier, sunlit, relaxed, unguarded. 6 weeks, she captioned it, followed by a ring emoji. The comments flooded in immediately. Congratulations. Beautiful couple. Can't wait. Daniel saw the post while waiting for coffee near his office. He didn't like it. He didn't comment. He didn't ask her to take it down. Withdrawal, he discovered, required no confrontation. At work, he became precise to the point of invisibility. Colleagues praised his focus, unaware that it was a form of absence. He stayed late, not because he had to, but because the office was quieter than home. Blueprints made sense. Buildings didn't lie. Olivia, meanwhile, performed. She smiled at fittings, laughed during planning calls, reassured her mother that everything was fine. Her denial wasn't dramatist, it was methodical. If she kept moving, if she kept presenting certainty, the cracks might not spread. But they did. At night, she drank more than usual. Not enough to be noticed by others, just enough to dull the edge of thought. She woke from shallow sleep with a tightness in her chest she couldn't explain. She checked her phone compulsively, half expecting messages that would never come. Daniel was still there, physically. He spoke when necessary. He listened politely, but he was no longer with her. One evening, they attended a dinner hosted by mutual friends, a pre-wedding gathering meant to celebrate their journey. Olivia held Daniel's hand across the table, her grip slightly too tight. She laughed at the right moments. She told the story of how they met as if it were a script she had memorized. Daniel nodded along. Someone raised a glass. To Olivia and Daniel, they said, you two are solid. The word struck him with unexpected force. Solid, Daniel smiled. Later in the car, the silence was unbearable. You were quiet tonight, Olivia said, trying for casual. I didn't have much to add. She turned toward him, frustration flashing through her composure. You can't just disappear like this. People are starting to notice. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. I'm not disappearing, he said. I'm just not pretending. That night, Olivia stood in front of the bathroom mirror for a long time. She examined her reflection as if searching for the version of herself she used to recognize. The confident one, the controlled one, the woman who could manage outcomes. Her phone buzzed, a notification from a private accountant she had forgotten to block. I keep thinking about you. Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen. Shame surged, followed by something worse. Longing. She deleted the message immediately. Then she sat on the floor and cried. Not for Daniel, not for the wedding, but for the illusion that she could undo what she had revealed about herself. In the bedroom, Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He was already grieving, not the loss of Olivia, but the loss of the man he had been when he trusted without hesitation. That man felt distant now, almost naive. He understood something with painful clarity. Staying would require him to become smaller. Leaving would require him to become alone. By morning, Olivia would sense the shift not as a decision, but as a closing door she no longer had access to, and no amount of public smiles could stop what was collapsing in private. Daniel did not wake up with clarity. There was no sudden resolve, no cinematic moment of realization. What he felt instead was a steady absence of resistance, as if his mind had finally stopped arguing with what his body had known for days. He made coffee. He showered. He dressed for work. Olivia watched him from the doorway, sensing something she couldn't name but deeply feared. His movements were unhurried, deliberate, not cold, just complete. Are you going in early? She asked. Yes. Can we talk tonight? Daniel paused, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. We can, he said, but it won't change anything. The words landed softly. That was what frightened her. All day, Olivia's phone remained face down on her desk. She checked it anyway, lifting it, setting it down, repeating the ritual until anxiety replaced habit. She rehearsed speeches in her head, apologies shaped differently, explanations stripped of ego, promises that sounded more desperate than sincere. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in a conference room overlooking the East River, listening to colleagues debate materials and budgets. He contributed when necessary. He took notes. He felt oddly detached, like someone observing his own life from a distance. He understood now that confrontation would give Olivia something to push against. Anger would give her a narrative. Forgiveness would invite negotiation. Silence offered none of that. When he came home that evening, Olivia was waiting. The apartment lights were dimmed. Dinner sat untouched on the table. I canceled my meeting, she said quickly. I wanted to be here. Daniel nodded and set his bag down. I've been thinking, Olivia began, about what you said, about choosing. I want you to know that I choose you. Now. Completely. He looked at her now with bitterness, but with an unmistakable finality. You're choosing the consequence, he said. Not the moment. Her eyes filled. What does that mean? It means, Daniel replied, that if nothing had surfaced, if I hadn't seen the messages, you wouldn't be standing here saying this. She shook her head. You don't know that. I do, he said gently, because I know you. The room felt smaller, as if the walls were leaning in to listen. I'm not angry, Daniel continued. I'm not trying to punish you. I just can't unlearn what I've learned. Olivia stepped closer. We can fix this. He didn't move away. He simply didn't move toward her either. Fixing it would require me to forget who you were when you thought I'd never know, he said. I don't want to live with that version of us. The quiet stretched between them, merciless and clean. What are you saying? She whispered. Daniel took a breath, not to steady himself, but to mark the moment. I'm calling off the wedding. The sentence was unadorned. No emphasis, no dramatic pause. Olivia's body reacted before her mind did. Her knees weakened. She reached for the back of a chair, eyes wide with disbelief. You can't, she said. It's weeks away. Everyone I know, Daniel interrupted softly. I've thought about that too. He had. The questions, the explanations, the disappointment on his parents' faces, the embarrassment, the logistical nightmare. None of it outweighed the cost of staying. "I don't hate you," he said, "but I don't trust you, and I won't build a life on hope that feels like denial." Olivia sank into the chair, her composure finally cracking. Tears came then, uncontrolled, messy, real. She covered her face, her shoulders shaking. Daniel watched her for a moment longer than necessary, not out of cruelty, but out of respect for what they were ending. Then he turned and walked into the bedroom. He began packing a small bag, not to leave forever, just to create distance. Distance, he knew now, was the only honest response. Behind him, the apartment held its breath. This was the choice that ended everything, not because it was loud or unforgiving, but because it left no room for reinterpretation. The aftermath did not arrive all at once. It unfolded slowly, unevenly, like a city waking up after a blackout, light returning to some streets before others. Daniel moved into a short-term rental near the river, a sparse apartment with white walls and almost no history. He told people the wedding was postponed, then later that it was canceled. Most didn't ask why. In modern life, endings were increasingly treated as private malfunction, uncomfortable, best not examined too closely. His parents were quiet on the phone, supportive but wounded. His mother asked if he was sure. His father said he trusted his judgment. Both statements carried weight. At night, Daniel cooked simple meals and ate standing up, listening to the sounds of the city. He slept better than he expected. Not peacefully, but honestly. There were no longer questions looping in his head, no need to interpret tone or silence. Loss, he learned, was easier to carry than doubt. Sometimes he missed Olivia. Not the woman she had revealed herself to be, but the idea of her, the shared shorthand, the familiarity of touch, the future they had rehearsed. He let the feeling come and go without assigning it authority. Solitude sharpened him. It stripped things down. He began running again in the mornings, tracing the river as the city shifted from gray to gold. In motion, he felt something close to clarity, not optimism, not triumph, but alignment. His life, smaller now, made sense. Olivia's world, by contrast, expanded outward and collapsed inward at the same time. Publicly, she managed the narrative with precision. The breakup was mutual. Timing issues, different paths. Friends nodded sympathetically. Invitations were quietly withdrawn. Deposits quietly lost. Privately, she unraveled. The apartment felt cavernous without Daniel's presence, not because he filled it with noise, but because he had anchored it. She replayed conversations endlessly, searching for alternative versions of herself, ones who had chosen differently, spoken sooner, been braver. There were moments she almost reached out to Marcus again, not because she wanted him, but because he represented a door she had once walked through without consequence. The knowledge that she could not undo that moment haunted her more than guilt ever had. At night, she lay awake scrolling through old photos, engagement smiles, candid laughter, proof of a self she no longer trusted. For the first time, her reflection offered no reassurance. Weeks later, Daniel returned to the apartment to collect the rest of his things. Olivia wasn't there. She had arranged it that way. He moved quietly, efficiently. When he reached the door, he paused, then left the key on the counter. That was all. They did not meet again. Life, as it always does, went on, unevenly, imperfectly. Daniel rebuilt without urgency, choosing carefully, aware now that love without truth was simply performance. Olivia carried forward with success, with polish, with an invisible weight that never quite lifted. Some choices echo longer than others, and some silences once chosen